And a very happy Wednesday to you at 12:08 in the West. It's the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
Johnny, I am sad to report that for the first time ever, our buddy at the LA City Council public hearings, 3-inch Shrimp, is saying things that are too filthy for the radio.
And what's strange is, even though his speeches, generally speaking, don't have much to do with policy affecting the city of Los Angeles, he's usually not as profane as the others. But today, he took it, well, he worked blue.
They cannot continue to bully my body.
If you want to see what he had to say, go look it up for yourself. But I feel like if I aired, even bleeped what he said about one certain councilwoman, I'd have to go to a meeting.
And that aired on Channel 35.
Well, everything airs on Channel 35.
I'm telling you, that's the best TV in L.A. right now.
And there are, of course, all of these people who don't usually go because they're all trying to advocate for the city to cap rent increases for rent stabilization units. And the city attorney has to keep trying to clarify, they're allowed to do this. We can't do anything about it. Sorry. Literally, the city attorney's like, you can put on your headphones and not listen to this if you want.
Wait, so they pass out air traffic controller headphones now so you don't have to hear the profanity?
They don't pass them out, but they encourage that you bring them so you don't hear the incredibly offensive things that are uttered at public comment.
Interesting.
I'd love to play you what he said, but it's just way too dark.
Yeah, we can't go there. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. And speaking of dark places, members of the California State Legislature tried to crack down on the buying and selling of children with the purpose of the sex trade. And their legislation went nowhere. And now, Randy, we're experiencing the fallout.
Gavin Newsom, for, I believe, the third year in a row, has to go after these public safety committees in the California legislature. Last year, it was the Senate Public Safety Committee. This year, it's the Assembly Public Safety Committee, because the Democrat Party in the state of California voting to not protect 16 and 17-year-olds isn't a good look if you're trying to run for president.
What's the argument for 16 and 17-year-olds being able to be bought and sold?
I do not understand who is voting to say that, no, we should not make it an automatic felony if you're purchasing a 16 or 17-year-old for the purchases of sex.
What do they anticipate? 16 and 17-year-olds becoming the new Tickle Me Elmo that everyone's going to want at Christmas?
Let's start with another report from the best in the business, KCRA 3's Ashley Zavala.
In a major development and an issue that we've been following now for months, Governor Gavin Newsom is now getting involved firsthand in the latest fight over child sex trafficking here in our state. The governor's office is speaking up after lawmakers today blocked an effort to crack down on the buyer's side of the child sex trafficking.
You know, you could actually say that members of the Assembly Public Safety Committee are pro-John.
Well, I appreciate you for bringing my name into this conversation.
You really, you hit the lottery with that name. It's the name for everything you don't want it to be.
Well, I have a niece named Jenna, and if you're picking teams and she decides that she wants you to be on genocide, that's another one that has certain dark implications.
Of the child sex trafficking industry. Thanks for being with us at 6. I'm Golston Dark.
And I'm Edie Lambert.
Can't beat that name, Golston.
Oh, no.
This specifically refers to those who buy 16 and 17-year-olds for sex. Let's get straight to our KCRA 3 Capitol correspondent Ashley Zavala, who, by the way, was the first to report the governor's involvement. Edie, for the third...
You know Gavin's pissed if he's reaching out to Zavala to comment on something.
Well, he hates it when other Democrats in California attract negative attention, because all of that negative attention, even if it wasn't his specific doing, attaches itself to him, and he wants to be president, so he wants them to cut it out.
Edie, for the third time on this issue of child sex trafficking, Governor Gavin Newsom is pushing back against members of his own party. While trafficking a child is already a serious felony in California, Democrats right now are divided over a proposal to go after the consumers of the industry by making it an automatic felony to buy a 16 or 17-year-old for sex.
Where is the constituency that is advocating against this?
I'm telling you, it's guys who look like Christopher Lloyd, who have about 900 stamps from Thailand on their passport. That's it.
No, they just like the food.
Oh, yeah.
The governor signaling his support for the latest push to protect the teens.
This is the best bill that I can bring today.
As the Assembly Public Safety Committee stalls an effort to stiffen penalties for the buyers of the child sex trafficking industry, Governor Gavin Newsom's office is speaking out. The governor once again concerned that 16 and 17-year-olds are being left out of a state law that makes it an automatic felony to buy a child for sex.
What's the idea here? Is it that there were so many songs in the 60s and 70s written about how hot 16-year-olds are that we can't criminalize that?
You know, if there was talk radio around when pirates were running the Caribbean islands and the buying and selling of people was a common practice, specifically for the sex trade, I wonder what the local talk radio would have sounded like.
In a statement first provided to KCRA3 Tuesday, Newsom's office said the law should treat all sex predators who solicit minors the same, as a felony, regardless of the intended victim's age. Full stop.
And Gavin is right.
For once.
But what does that say about the majority of the members of the Assembly Public Safety Committee?
Okay, don't give him too much credit, though. To come out against the buying and selling of children for the purposes of sex is not something that he deserves a medal for.
That's fair.
Schultz.
I mean, it is a fairly common sense position. If you are against that position, how the hell did you get to Sacramento?
Well, what's the compromise on this? You can buy them and sell them, but just not for the purposes of sex?
Well, this was the compromise last year with Shannon Grove's bill, the one that got all the attention because the Senate Public Safety Committee didn't want to felonize the purchasing of any children. The deal that was cut, the compromise was, okay, we'll make it a felony if they're 15, but if they're 16 or 17, it's a wobbler. That was the deal.
Schultz, aye.
The governor's involvement coming hours after this vote in the committee that agreed to move forward with Democratic Assemblymember Maggie Krell's bill targeting buyers, so long as the automatic felony for older teens was taken out.
Yes, as long as we gut the entire bill, we'll still pass it.
And by the way, going back to Gavin for a second, he's real brave coming out in favor of the bill now that it's already died. Where was he when the debate was going on?
He was having a press conference talking about how he does Doge better than Elon.
Thank you for your profile and courage.
Krell has investigated these crimes for decades and was a prosecutor for the California Department of Justice. She's vowed to not give up.
I don't think we're doing enough to protect children from sex trafficking. I think that's pretty clear. It's clear from the survivors. It's clear from, driving down to the Blade right now. There's 16 and 17-year-olds being sold for sex, and that's not okay, and we need to do more about it.
Some Democrats on the committee worry how stiffer penalties for buyers overall would impact the LGBTQ community, people of color, and older teens in relationships with younger minors.
Wait, what?
I told you, remember yesterday when we had this conversation, I said the reason that they're doing this is the same reason that they want to decriminalize welfare fraud. They think that if you put people in jail for buying and selling children or committing welfare fraud, it's going to negatively impact minorities.
So we shouldn't go after sex predators if they're minorities?
That's the theory behind what they're doing.
Have they consulted with Black Biden?
Not today. Not on Black Biden's watch.
Well, here's the thing, though. How much do you want to bet? They may think it's black people or immigrants or gays or whatever. But how much do you want to bet it's organized crime? Go back to the EDD fraud when we had billions of dollars stolen from the state of California. It wasn't even people who lived in the state. It was organized crime rings from out of state that were stealing money from taxpayers in California. I would be willing to bet, whatever you're willing to lose, that that's exactly what's going on here, too.
Some Democrats on the committee worry how stiffer penalties for buyers overall would impact the LGBTQ community, people of color, and older teens in relationships with younger minors.
So that one I don't understand either. This is about soliciting sex from a prostitute.
Yeah, and if you're an older teen in a relationship with a younger one, it doesn't count as a relationship if you have a receipt.
Older teens in relationships with younger minors. Assemblyman Nick Schultz is the chairman.
This is the jackass in Burbank-Glendale that replaced Laura Friedman, and as bad as she was, he's worse.
We went from the frying pan to the fire.
Assemblyman Nick Schultz is the chairman of the committee. He wants to have an informational hearing on this later in the fall.
What does that even mean?
It's like Karen Bass wanting to investigate why she went to Ghana. Okay, let's investigate whether or not the buying and selling of children for sex is good or bad.
By the way, I got a notification from our friends at Street People of Los Angeles. Nick Schultz is going to be having a town hall this Friday at 7 o'clock. So if you have some issues with Nick Schultz, go make your voice heard in Burbank.
Now, I wonder if he's going to be taking questions or he's just going to have an auctioneer with him and they're going to move some 16-year-olds.
Can't Democrats immediately get on board with something like this?
Yeah, so I would emphasize two things. First of all, the exploitation of any children, as we heard in there in the comments I made in the dais, it's already unlawful to do anything like that in the state of California.
Yeah, but it's a misdemeanor, which doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, that's like a parking ticket.
What we're talking about is a very specific, narrow issue of whether or not the
So if they're 15 years old and 364 days, it's a felony. 365 days, they turn 16, not really that big of a deal anymore.
By the way, I mean, I don't want to get too far off topic, but the buying and selling of adults is not okay either.
No, it's not. That should also be an automatic felony.
No kidding.
We're talking.
If you want to do that legally, get your butt to Pahrump.
What we're talking about is a very specific, narrow issue of whether or not the stiff penalties that apply in, say, a human crime.
We've got to stop using that word in relation to this story.
Yeah, no kidding.
The stiff penalties that apply in, say, a human trafficking context should apply in a non-human trafficking context involving a 16 or 17-year-old.
No, the bill is specifically about purchasing prostitutes, which is human trafficking. We already went after the traffickers. This goes after the purchasers. Why don't we want to go after them?
There's no good explanation for it.
The stiff penalties that apply in, say, a human trafficking context should apply in a non-human trafficking context involving a 16 or 17-year-old. As you know, under Senate Bill 1414, which passed last year, that's a mandatory sex offender registration. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't at least entertain that conversation, but how that might apply to an 18...
You don't want someone that is purchasing a 16-year-old for sex to become a sex offender?
Oh, no, because that might negatively impact their ability to get on the Supreme Court.
Who exactly is this representative government representing?
And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't at least entertain that conversation, but how that might apply.
Burbank, Glendale, did you do any research before you sent this jackass to Sacramento?
It's funny because that area used to be filled with sane people. And then I don't know what the hell happened out there. But they lost their minds.
And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't at least entertain that conversation. But how that might apply to an 18 and 17-year-old in a relationship might be different from what we might...
Is it a pimp-prostitute relationship? Because that's what the bill's about.
From his point of view, that's employer-employee.
We might see from what we think about people that are out here trying to get somebody off the blade and exploit them.
Meanwhile, survivors and victims like Ashley are watching how this all unfolds.
Being in a room as a 16 and 17-year-old, not knowing who's going to come through the door to purchase you, not knowing if they're going to hurt you, if they're going to rape you, what their fetishes are. Like, that stuff is real concerns for 16 and 17-year-olds. So I'm grateful for the progress, but looking forward to new amendments and new bills coming in the future.
Completely pathetic out of Sacramento.
And it's not just him. He has a majority with him. They could dump him as the committee chairman anytime they want. They choose to keep him there.
So going back to the governor's comments, those are consistent with what he's been saying on this issue. Lawmakers actually tried to do this last year, make it an automatic felony to purchase anyone 18 and under. He spoke out after the Senate's Public Safety Committee removed 16 and 17-year-olds from the law. In 2023, the governor had to get involved in a similar situation on a bill to make child sex trafficking a serious felony. The Assembly Public Safety Committee at the time blocked that.
Every single year, this is a headache for Gavin.
Here's why I think they created separation between 16 and 17-year-olds and the rest of them. I bet you, and there are people out there, perverts, who are attracted to very young children, but the majority who purchase prostitutes are not going after very young children. I would imagine that most of the demand is for 16 and 17-year-olds. And because most of the demand is there, if they started cracking down on the buying and selling of 16 and 17-year-olds, you'd fill the jails.
No problem with me.
But then did a do-over after the governor spoke out. We'll see what happens this time now that, again, we're on time number 3.
Yeah, and the governor again getting involved. So what's been the reaction to the governor speaking up again on this?
Yeah, and that just happened a couple of hours ago, so we're still waiting for a lot of comments from folks. But the chairman of the Assembly Public Safety Committee, Nick Schultz, who you heard from earlier, he released a statement that, in part, invited the governor to the informational hearing he hopes to have later this fall.
Oh, come on.
Let's educate Gavin on why he's wrong.
This guy's got to go.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Amy writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com on teen sex trafficking. California Assembly members who are against making it a felony to sex traffic 16-year-olds need to be investigated. Catch my drift?
You know, there's a lot to be said for that. Because what's the saying? Sometimes your private demons become your public crusades.
If you are defending this behavior and not wanting to make it a felony, might be time to see how much time you have spent on Craigslist.
Okay, a lot of you want to weigh in on this, and if you'd like to join in on the conversation, give us a call at 800-222-5222. All right, let's go to Dale in Long Beach. Dale, hello.
Yeah, John and Randy, it sounds so morally corrupted. It's unbelievable. It's like the first person with the email makes you wonder who's engaging in this kind of behavior and doesn't want to get caught for a felony in the future.
Yeah, that's a legitimate question to ask because I just can't understand the argument as to why you would want to allow this to go on, especially if you have the ability to do something about it. We can complain about it. In theory, they could make it illegal.
To take a look.
What's that?
Oh, sorry. We need that new federal prosecutor to take a look at this.
Yeah, the problem, though, for a lot of these things is that they're state crimes. Unless you shoot someone on a military base or do it in a post office, for example, the crime of murder is a state crime. You'd get charged by your local district attorney. Most violent crime is, including sexual assaults and rape and those sorts of things. The state of California would have the responsibility for going after people who are doing illegal things of a sexual nature to adults or children. And if the state of California says we're going to regard it as a misdemeanor, I don't know if there's anything the federal government can do. Maybe you can go after them for the trafficking if you do it across state lines or from another country or whatever. But if it's just someone who's homegrown, I think that falls under the jurisdiction of California.
Well, maybe we need a new proposition. And don't forget, Gavin Newsom didn't want Proposition 36 to even get on the ballot.
Well, that's what got us into this trouble in the first place. Too many illicit propositions.
All right. Thanks, fellas. Have a good day.
Thank you for the call. And it just goes to show you, again, in a one-party state, they don't listen. And by they, I mean elected officials in Sacramento. They don't listen to Republicans when Republicans get all worked up over something because Republicans in the state, by and large, don't matter. Democrats outnumber Republicans 2-1. If Democrats get worked up over something, that's when you'll start to see some action. That's when you'll start to see people in Sacramento second-guessing doing what they're doing. The question becomes, will they get any pushback from Democratic voters in their districts?
I got to imagine that if people who voted for Nick Schultz in Glendale and Burbank didn't know anything about him, if they know this, chances are they won't vote for Nick Schultz again. But I don't know. It's a weird state.
You know what's funny, though? If you look at the numbers in the last presidential election, in Los Angeles County in particular, you saw some cities take hard turns to the right, where you saw cities like Beverly Hills now have a Republican majority. But one of the cities that moved by double digits to the right in the last election was Glendale. And Glendale, while it's now a Democratic city and a Democratic district, is not historically a Democratic area. That was Beaver Cleaver suburbs. That's where Daryl Gates, the former police chief of the LAPD, is from. That's the area that elected Jim Rogan to Congress cycle after cycle. And Pat Nolan, the Republican leader in the state legislature at one time, was a member representing Glendale. So it's not an area that is without history of voting for the other side. The question becomes, will this give them enough motivation to start looking for alternatives? We had a candidate who was running for office in Glendale. I don't think it was for the state legislature. I think it was for Congress.
Oh, Alex Balakian. Yeah, the guy that was running against Laura Friedman to replace Adam Schiff.
Yeah, and sometimes in these districts that aren't regarded as competitive, you get gadfly candidates that have no resume, they have no ideas, they haven't really thought things through. They just know that they want to see their name on the ballot. He wasn't like that. That guy, I think, was a medical doctor, had a good head on his shoulders, made a lot of sense when he came on, was talking about different subjects that were being debated in that election. That's an area where if they push things too far, even though it's a Democratic city and a Democratic district, you could start to see some change in voting patterns. Let's go to Bob in Encino. Bob, hello.
Well, I'd like to say two things for the record. Number one, you and Mr. Wang are doing a wonderful job. And number two, when you mentioned the broadcast on TV of the city council meetings, I went to both Channel 34 and 35, and they were blacked out.
Oh, no.
Well, so they treat it like Skinamax at the hotel?
Yes, pretty much.
Well, it's probably more profane than Skinamax.
Okay, what you got to do, Bob, is you got to go on YouTube and subscribe to the channel LA City View 35. There they air it all raw and uncensored every single day.
Yeah, I'm watching the Dodger game. I'd rather watch the Dodger game than those knuckleheads.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
Thank you for the call, sir.
Thanks for everything.
And Randy, we have an update on the status of California's bullet train.
Yes, the CEO for the California bullet train has now got a new estimate for when we're going to see an extension of the bullet train. Palmdale to Gilroy could be happening as soon as 2045.
And they have missed every single deadline that they've had. So that would mean if they're on time, you could ride the train from Palmdale to Gilroy, I guess if you like garlic. In 2045, I will be 65 years of age if and when that happens.
Yeah, this isn't happening. Of the 119 miles that is under construction in the Central Valley, the one that goes from Wasco to Merced, only 22 miles is ready for track laying. And that's not even starting until next year. And that's only if they get their $7 billion infusion of cash, which now has the CEO of the High-Speed Rail Authority begging for private investment into this project that the state can then pay back those investors with interest.
And how long ago was it when Gavin Newsom had that press conference declaring high-speed rail to be a smashing success?
January. I know it feels like a year ago, but it was only January.
I feel like I say this every day, but just another normal day here in the insane asylum. All right, let's move on to a story that we talked about yesterday about a plan in Sacramento that would punish people who opted for solar power.
The state of California has encouraged solar for a very long time, and they had very, very, very nice incentives to convince people to spend tens of thousands of dollars to make their roofs look ugly and get solar panels. That included 20-year contracts that you would be able to sell back your energy to the utilities and have a zero and possibly have a bill where they're paying you. Well, Lisa Calderon of the California Assembly doesn't think that's equitable and wants to screw over people that are in those programs right now.
And she just happens to be a former executive for Southern California Edison.
You don't say. For more, here is CBS 8 in San Diego.
Yeah, if this bill eventually becomes law, it would slash the amount of time people with rooftop solar could receive energy credits, cutting it in half from 20 years down to 10.
Pretty upsetting.
There's going to be so many lawsuits because people literally sign contracts.
Well, and then you have a beautiful house and you purposely made your roof look like Gorbachev's head because you thought you were going to get all kinds of sweet action.
It's pretty upsetting. We leased these panels in good faith, and now it seems that that faith's been a bit betrayed.
Barry Dragon lives in Rancho Penasquitos. He's had these solar panels for about 10 years now.
Yeah, we've got 36 solar panels.
He's locked into a 20-year contract leasing these panels for over $200 a month. He and his wife are retired.
Oh, God. He has a better chance getting out of Scientology.
So he's in a 20-year contract to keep paying for these things, but the 20-year deal that the state was going to let him sell that energy back to San Diego Gas and Electric, they want to cut that in half. So now this guy's going to be going in the red.
Uh-oh.
He and his wife are retired.
Didn't the state want to go green? I'm so confused at what actually is important to California. Is it environmentalism or is it equity?
It's about green, all right. Money.
He and his wife are retired on fixed income. The excess energy produced by his solar panels earns him credits with SDG&E, and that keeps his bills down.
And all of a sudden, the state's coming back and saying, oh, we were just kidding. We're going to take back the last 10 years of your 20-year credit, and you'll have to pay the difference.
And it's not like he can get out of his lease with his solar company.
No, if he wants any excess energy, he's going to have the wife get on one of those stationary bikes and start pedaling, just like what the professor did on Gilligan's Island to run his dental shop.
According to the nonprofit Solar Rights Alliance, the new rules would affect 2 million solar consumers across California, and more than 250,000 of them here in San Diego County. Executive Director Dave Rosenfeld.
I've made a long-term investment based on the fact that the state was offering a contract where the terms were for 20 years. And when you break that, then you put a whole bunch of people underwater.
The state is going to get sued left and right if they do this.
And they should.
I talked to the bill's sponsor, Assemblymember Lisa Calderon, who's based in Los Angeles.
California, specifically the Los Angeles listeners, stop voting for anyone named Calderon.
Well, and when she gets termed out, the two that just got out of prison, I think one of them has eligibility left at least one house of the state legislature. Those Calderons just multiply.
The dynasties of complete idiocy tend to thrive in the state of California. Example A, Garcetti.
Well, how about the Hans?
Well, there's that too. Janice.
I love the bus driver.
It's not my intent to penalize solar customers.
That's literally what your bill does.
Yes. And you're punishing them harshly.
Customers at all. I think they absolutely should.
Oh, boy. She's one of those.
Oh, yeah.
I think they absolutely should recoup their investment.
She claims California's rooftop solar incentive program merely adds more costs to those without solar for things like grid maintenance.
No. That's BS that the utilities say, so they jack up everybody's bills. And what makes you think that if you pass this law and you screw over the rooftop solar owners, that SoCal Edison, SDG&E, and PG&E are going to suddenly lower the bills? They don't do that.
This is what they always do. Whenever they do something for a donor, they always say, oh, no, it's actually out of equity.
She says the cost shift onto non-solar customers last year was $8.5 billion.
For me, it's a question about fairness and nothing more. And I do think, solar energy and affordability can go in hand.
No, they can't, because you just made them less affordable.
You made it so that people are less likely to go solar.
But we need to figure out how to do that in an equitable way.
There you go.
Equity is the key word for everything, and it means nothing. This isn't about equity. This is about filling the pockets of her former employer.
Critics of the bill point out that Assemblymember Calderon was an executive for 25 years at Southern California Edison, one of the largest utility companies in the state.
And we should be encouraging more.
Is it even ethical for someone like her to be writing a bill that has anything to do with utilities?
Well, usually if you sit on a city council or you sit on an appointed board or commission, if whatever the legislation that's in front of you directly impacts your employer or you have to recuse yourself from the vote. I guess not her.
There you go. If you got rooftop solar and you thought that 20-year contract was good, it's not going to be if this passes.